Hello, everyone. Glad y'all are able to join us tonight. As always, tonight we've got our Nightbot system up, and so the mods, you won't have to do any prompts and things. They'll take care of that for us, and we appreciate that new technology and that we're making use of. Appreciate that. Also, as in anytime that we talk about cases, no names, no initials, other than who we'll be addressing. They have to have been included in some type of law enforcement search warrants, documents, and of that nature. Um, and if you have any information on this case, most certainly contact law enforcement. Advise them of any tips or information you have that needs to be given to law enforcement, the prosecutors, or the defense. We want a fair trial and we want justice for Libby and Abby at all costs. That's what we have to do. And with that being said, we'll get started in here. All right. As always, a little introduction. This is Mrs. Steve, and I'm Steve. I'm retired law enforcement, had 20 years of service, started off in the jail, worked the road, and went into investigations, and had training all across the board with law enforcement from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician, which helped my investigative career immensely. And I've worked all different types of cases from thefts all the way up to homicides. Then when I retired, um, uh, became aware of the web sleuth and the true crime world and decided to become an ambassador for law enforcement and created this channel. And we've been growing pretty rapid. Now, I owe that to a lot of people out there. There's a lot of great channels out there that have helped me, and I thank them so much. And so let's get into it. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Ives, Robert Ives, who was the when this when these terrible murders occurred with Libby and Abby. Robert Ives was a prosecutor in Carroll County, and we did a show on him a few months ago. And Robert Ives, in his own words, of what when he was interviewed and some of the statements he made, and it was a wonderful interview and had a lot of information in it. And I went back in there and analyzed it and gave you from the law enforcement perspective what it meant to me. And recently I got a email asking me to look back at this case and that presentation I presented and compared what would the analysis have been if Robert Ives had known then what he now knows and about Richard Allen. And it brings up, a great point. Looking back, hindsight, but how close was he? I mean, when you look at what he was talking about, and we'll be going over some of those points that he made during that interview, he was dead on. I mean, the man was dead on in a lot of the points that he made during that interview. And we had to find what was that disconnect and how did Richard Allen slip through the cracks. And that's fascinating in and of itself. And I'm sure that Ives, when he looks back and he was made aware of Richard Allen, that he said what? And he probably made some contacts with some people and say, how come we weren't made aware of this? And that's just my speculation on it. Because like I said, I like Mr. Ives. He's well-spoken, highly intelligent, seemed to have every interest of this case at heart. And I think he was absolutely accurate on so many points that will be used in this case. And we can look at what he said from that previous interview and how that's going to come to bear in this court case. It's going to be extremely important. And Mr. Ives laid the groundwork for a great case. And we wouldn't be here without individuals such as Mr. Ives and everything that they subpoenaed, all the records they had, the organization that they had back then. And of course, it fell through the cracks. And that was due to what purpose and by whom. Of course, they'll have to address those issues in court, but the foundation is solid. That if everything they did and everything he talked about in that prior interview, as we go through it, you'll see that it's extremely important where this case is going to flow and how it's going to flow, and that regardless of what the defense says, it's going to be based apart or on part of exactly what this man did in 2017. But anyway, he was a prosecutor, had 22 years experience that he spoke of during the interview, 18 years out in Carroll County, and that he had traveled to the crime scene. So the information that he was aware of, and I would assume that he was aware of that bullet at some point during this investigation, because he went there to see what type of evidence, and he mentions, as you'll see as we go into this, all the evidence that they had. And that he commented that they produced all the search warrants and subpoenas that has laid the groundwork for this. And there will be some issues there on some of the search warrants, and some of the search warrants that were executed, and and especially a search warrant that was never written that we know of. And if it ever was written, it was never executed, because if you go by what the attorneys say, there was a 5-year gap from the time that Richard Allen came forward to the time that he was interviewed again in 2022, which will be important. But anyway.
Chris is here.
Yes.
And he's been a member for 3 months.
Chris, thank you for being here with us. And Chris is, like I said, he has done so much for the true crime community out there. Not just my channel, but for the true crime community. He's highly intelligent, highly motivated, and I enjoy watching him. He has critical thinking skills that I admire, and I look forward to working with him in future cases. But thank you for being here, and thank you for being a member, and thank you for everything you've done for all the communities out there, not just mine, but others. But then we have to look at Richard Allen and everything that he's done and what his attorneys are going to have to do about laying the foundation of their defense. And they've got a pretty good foundation. If what they said in that press release, if all that is true, they've got a foundation laid that this man came forward and has nothing, of course, that's going to be argued. The defense is not saying anything that you wouldn't expect a defense to say. They're going to attack every bit of the state evidence. They're going to portray him absolutely as innocent, and he is innocent to proven guilty. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Our Constitution says that you have that right, and you'll be tried by a jury of your peers. And will they be in a different venue, a change of venue for this case? Don't see any other way, but yes, that will probably be granted. Where that will be, don't know, but that'll be coming up in the cases or in the court case as they argue those points, and wherever the judge finally decides that, yes, this is where we're going to move to. So it's, in all court cases, it's fascinating, it's educational, and it's something that we all should be aware of so that we can see how this system works, and that justice is more often than not is found. Sometimes there are failures both ways. Sadly, sometimes people are not that appear to be guilty or found innocent, and sometimes people that appear guilty are innocent and wrongfully convicted. So both sides, and our justice system, though, is the best that we got in the world, and so we have to honor it regardless of the outcome. And we may have opinions about it, but it's still the best system that's out there. All right. One of the statements that Mr. Ives said is, and this is true, when I traveled up there, he made a statement that if you weren't from around here, you wouldn't know it existed. And I would have never known it existed until I became aware of the Delphi murders of Libby and Abby. And so when Mrs. Steve and I decided to travel up there, we knew it existed, and we had opportunities to have people meet us and show us where the bridge was, but that wasn't part of what the reason we traveled up there for. We wanted to go there that with the knowledge that we had gained from the internet, how hard would it be to find? And we went, what, 4 locations for at least 4 locations before we got to the actual bridge itself. It kept taking us to either some of the park trails or otherwise, and it's just due to how we, as we looked it up. So I have to agree that when Mr. Ives says if you weren't from around there, you wouldn't know it even existed, and which I think we were there 10 minutes when we both decided, yes, this was a local individual. This is somebody from out of town that was just passing through momentarily looking for a random victim. But anyway, Mr. Ives in his interview also went in there and said that they had support from FBI, sheriffs, cities. They had all the resources in the world. And I believe there was between 20 something and 30 agencies that had stepped forward and was offering personnel. And from his going to the crime scene, he absolutely, everyone there, all the agencies, everyone that had any insight into the case, they thought it'd be solved in a couple of 3 days. And would have been if, because we have information that Richard Allen came forward early on in the investigation and gave that information that I was on the bridge. Tom, $20. Thank you for your expert insight, Steve. We truly appreciate it. Keep up the solid work. Have something to send you for an explanation on the Idaho 4. Thank you.
Ooh.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And yes, we appreciate all the support we have. We have a great community, and Tom supports a lot of communities, and he does some great work. And he has helped Chris on some cases and things, and we appreciate Tom. But Mr. Ives, when you look at all the support and all the information that was coming in, and they had a system as tips came in of how they was distribute and send people out to look at certain tips and follow up on information. And there was a misstep in there somewhere. Not, who the tip came in. There was a meeting set up, and there, like I said, there was a disconnect and a misstep there. But anyway, Ives went on and said that they have, and this is the foundation of their case that's going to be so critical as we proceed in the coming days with the court. You have your cell phone, digital footprint, your searches, your internet, all this stuff that his Wi-Fi, that they're going to be basing some of the information that they gathered recently. But back then in 2017, they had all this evidence. They had the cell phone, they had DNA, and lots of subpoenas for cell phone records. And he says that they were looking at who could have been within 5 miles of the crime that day. And how accurate is that? The individual they're looking for is right there, within sight of the bridge. I mean, you're looking at within a mile or so, just right on the edge of town. That if you leave Delphi and you come in on the private drive side, you go past Richard Allen's house. And so that's huge. And that was part of the reason that probably they missed Richard Allen, is that his residence is so close to the crime scene that his cell phone data was constantly there every day. So there's nothing that was stood out of his digital footprint of him being a stranger to the area. Because as we saw when I went out and did my test with my cell phone locating, there was a lot of times that my phone would show that I was within a 5 mile area. And for whatever reasons of the service that was there with it. And that was just a few months ago. They still showed that. So, and when you look at it 5 years ago, what technologies and how often and how big was that footprint back then? And, but all this information I gathered back then was who was physically present in the area. And like I said, with Richard Allen, he was basically within presence of that crime scene within a 1.5 miles, 2 miles, most every day for at least other than his work hours or time going out to eat or time going to travel or wherever he was, all the rest of his time, his residence is well within the parameters of where the crime scene was. And so his presence wouldn't be something that would stand out as being a one-time thing. And I believe that led to some of the confusion of trying to sort out who BG was. But they were looking for someone that had been there for at least 3 hours. Is that based upon the vehicle parking? And they were also looking for some outliers, such as, was there a phone number that had never been there before or since? And there still is that possibility as we look at some of the statements made by the prosecutor and some of the statements made by Doug Carter, that when you look at it, that was there burner phones? Were there phones that weren't ID'd? What are those tentacles? What are those actors that may be involved? Who are those and where will it go? We just don't know. But, Ives was sure about when he was talking and discussing this about the pings on the cell tower, and that's going to be absolutely huge, and how accurate those pings will be. In that area, we found out that the pings are not really that accurate. Take it for what it is. Anyone can go out there and do what we did and see the same results. I did it in the dead of night when there was no other cell phone. I don't believe there was anybody's cell phone on that as I was climbing those cliffs in the total darkness at that time. I don't think anyone else was, other than the people that lived there, anywhere near that would. Tom, I wonder if Ives meant by non-secular items a holy bullet at the crime scene. Is that normal prosecution language? Is it common to pump the brakes to secure prosecution? I don't know. That's an interesting thought. Non-secular. I don't know if you can classify a bullet as something that would be non-secular. A holy bullet. But is that a signature? And I did have, speaking of that topic, we did have one of my, a person in my community a week or two ago brought up about that bullet. Was that the thing that they were talking about as possibly being a signature? That if that bullet was positioned in such a manner, not that it was lost, but that it was positioned as a calling card. And I don't know. If that is the case, then Tom, that is a possibility. Don't know. But as we go forward, there's a lot of different ways you can look at things, and I appreciate my community challenging me on new ideas and thought processes. Then you look on the opposite side of that. Enough of what Ives says. Now we start looking at what Rick says, and through his defense attorney, that his attorney says that without Rick coming forward, the police probably would not have had any way of knowing that he was on the trail that day. The attorney said, well, they would have known that he was within that parameters of whatever the cell tower footprint and his digital footprint in that area would be. And some of those prints would be absolutely dead on. Not every signal that I had on the night that we went out and did our test was wrong. Some of them were within feet, but there was a lot of them that were within 5 miles. And is that the case with the day of? So I have a little bit of problem that they probably knew that Richard Allen was in the vicinity of the trails that day. Why it didn't click, I have no idea. Was it looked at? Who were the analysts that looked at it, and how did they interpret that information? Were they looking more for a stranger that wasn't there every day? Because you would have that Richard Allen is going to be extremely close, to the crime scene. He's probably in the top 50 people that live in that town or residences to that crime scene. And probably of the cell phones, he's probably in the top 200, because if you look at the farmers and the businesses and the people in that area that day, he would have been there every day. And so he would have been, his cell service, he's in being as close to the crime scene, he's in the top. And so that might have eliminated some of them looking at him as a suspect. But let's see, it says, Tom again, I guess what I meant is it was a holy miracle that bullet was left at the scene, and that's what he meant by non-secular. Oh, okay, that's what you're talking about.
Oh, I got it.
Okay, I got you. I was looking at it from the other perspective, but it is a miracle. But we also have to look at it, was it a signature calling card? Both ways, which one? It is an absolute miracle that's one of the things that was left there. And we'll see how valuable that bullet is to this case. And I think it's going to be huge. Especially it's going to be huge if the partial DNA is on that bullet, if his partial fingerprint is on that bullet, along with the markings, the tool marks from his gun that's attributed to being on that unspent round, which is huge. And if you stack them up, and if that's true, the only thing that we know that's true about any of those right now is that within the probable cause, they said that that bullet had been cycled through his gun. And that is a miracle stand alone. You're right. And that they found it if it wasn't put out as a calling card. But the attorney said that Rick volunteered to meet with a conservation officer outside of the local, which means that at some point Rick called in and they said, hey, can you meet so-and-so at such and such location? And so he volunteered to go up there and meet him at the grocery store and offered all the details on his trip to the trail on that day. And he told who he saw that those interactions had no significance to the case. And the witnesses, of course, corroborate this. I did another video of where we look at that, of how much those three juveniles, they relay the same information, which is huge, that you have a person who says, I'm on that trail, and you have three witnesses that said he's on that trail and that he parked at a certain location, all that information, and it was missed. The most critical piece was missed. And we're going to talk about a search warrant here in just a moment. And the next time Rick heard from the police was in October of 2022. This was approximately 2 weeks before a contested sheriff's election. And the attorneys start getting into why possibly that there was some political reasons of why this arrest was made. And it was only due to the election process. Hope that's not the case. Have no idea, but that's where I take it that the attorney is going towards. But when we talk about the search warrant of Ron Logan and how that might have been, and we had a lengthy discussion for several hours today on this as we went out to supper, and about with Ron Logan's search warrant, they used certain evidence within that search warrant, saying that there was a number of people that had identified from the image that Libby had taken of the guy that we identified as Bridge Guy, that numerous people had identified that as Ron Logan. And it brought up a thought that I've never had before about that if you use, and I wrote it down, that so many people identified from that image that was Ron Logan, do you drain that well that you can't use that same information against another individual, such as that you have, say, 5, 10 people identified, and I know they had like 15 tips saying it was Ron Logan, but he'd been tipped in that many times because they included him numerous times in the search warrant. But if you use that one time and it turns out that you have another suspect, can you dip into that same well again and say, well, okay, it didn't work against him. Now let's turn and put our sights on another individual and say that so many people said, well, that looks like Richard Allen. And so would that be brought out in court? I probably believe that will be the case, because I would think that would be, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't just jump from one suspect to another saying that, well, 15 says it's him, 15 says it's him, and we're going to use the same information time and time again on a search warrant. Hopefully there's some attorneys out there, because I'm going to talk. I've got some that send me emails sometimes, and I'm going to ask them that. What are the implications of that? Because I don't know the answer to it. I just know as a law enforcement officer, I wouldn't be able to do it in good faith, that, turn from one to another with the same information using the evidence time and time again. It takes away from more the probable cause. And I'm just not into that we vote for the most popular suspect. We have to have evidence. It's not just a voting process. But Richard Allen, when he was interviewed in 2017, of course, he says that from the tip narrative that he parked at the old farm building, that he saw the three females, described one of them as being taller, that he didn't speak with them, and that he walked from the Freedom Bridge to the High Bridge. He did not see anybody else, and that there was vehicles parked at the High Bridge trailhead that day, and that he took no pictures or videos. But he said he was looking at his phone that day. And so there's, from his narrative back in 2017, which is corroborated, as I did the other video about this, by those three witnesses and additional witnesses. He says he was there and that he was out there on the High Bridge. And for some reason that was dropped. That was a big disconnect, and we just don't know how it was. And then when they interviewed him again in 2022, he once again, which at this time, the full focus and he was well within the sights of the investigation, and everybody and everything was falling in line that, oh, we missed this guy, and how in the world did we? And I'm sure Mr. Ives is saying the same thing. How did we miss this guy? And there was a disconnect, and that has to be answered at some point, because everything that he says in 2022, would he have answered the same way in 2017? And would Ives have known this information in 2017? Would he have issued a search warrant? And did they just not? I don't believe so. I hope I'm right on that. I hope they didn't have all this information and they just throwed it to the side. I'm hoping that's not the case. But anyway, Allen's attorney went on further to point out that Allen's Ford Focus is not in any way similar to the distinctive look of the PT Cruiser or smart car that was described by witnesses that was parked at the CPS building. He says he parked at the old farm building. Is that something that led to the, the wrong direction of this? Tom, I would not touch that Daily Mail update, equivalent to tabloids. Thank you for your expert insight. They knew about Richard Allen a long time ago, I think. And very possible. We know that some of the officers, absolutely, they knew about Richard Allen in the first few days. You're absolutely correct. They knew about him. How in the world it got missed? And that's just during, like I've said, in the chaos of receiving all this information. How did it get missed, and how did it get put back and overlooked? And a lot of questions are going to come out about that, and a lot of finger pointing, even between the agencies, is going to occur, just going to happen. And but they're going, of course, you got these witnesses. I don't think it's going to be a real big deal. They saw a car there. You've got a guy that says that he was parked there, and he'll have to overcome that. If they're going to ask him, well, where did he park? Or they're going to ask all the witnesses. Now, Mr. Allen may never take the witness stand. He may, because if he takes that witness stand, that prosecutor is going to say, show me where you parked that day. And I don't think that's an answer that the defense is prepared to defend against, because I believe Mr. Allen's going to point to a certain CPS lot versus a old farm building. Now, there's plenty of old farm buildings, but where would that be? I mean, you got these farms, you got these businesses, and he'd have to say he was parked somewhere else. But how many of those other areas would have given you the ability to see that there's vehicles parked at the Freedom Bridge parking lot. How would, where else would you have been able to park that you will pass these females as they walk towards the Freedom Bridge? So we know he's in that area. And there's only a limited amount of parking areas and places there and a number of buildings that allow parking. So I'm sure that the location he parked at, for whatever reason, misstating or purposely misstating and calling the old farm building different than the CPS, may have just been an accident that was good fortune for him. Then, of course, you go through the crime scene stuff that he says that there's characteristics you take pictures of, that they never had a crime like that. There was so much physical evidence at the crime. And the physical evidence, and he said some of it was odd, unique facts. And I think finding an unspent round at a murder site is somewhat odd. And that was, there's other things he said physically strange. They had fingerprints, they had DNA, and they had footprints. I'm looking forward to those footprints. That's going to be huge because they have footprints, and not of the victims, but of a suspect. And the casting of those footprints will be huge because it'll be a lot like O.J. Simpson, that either the shoe doesn't fit, and just as O.J. said, if it doesn't fit, you must have quit. And so that shoe, if they have his shoe footprint in that mud, we're going to find some interesting information there, because I don't know how big a footprint Richard Allen has. And I don't know what size shoes he's going to wear to that courtroom. But they'll be doing some studies and medicals and measurements, and they'll have the exact size shoe that he wears. And they'll be finding whatever that footprint, if there is a footprint of him, they're going to find a similar style boot. If they got the exact boot, they're going to probably have a lot more evidence than just a footprint. They're going to have some other different types of biological fluids, blood, other things that might be on those boots. And he said that he knows there was DNA evidence there that's not from the girls. What is that DNA? Is it animal? Don't know. And he says there's no apparent motive. And he says there's certain signatures there. We don't know what that means yet. And that the scene was contaminated, which more than likely was by the search party. But we have the unspent round. We have the 6 sire that is going to play a huge part in this case. And he stated that the video and audio of this bridge guy is who he believes killed the girls. And if that's Richard Allen, then as one, and there's a lot of argument out there how many different actors they are and tentacles, don't know yet. Could it be? Absolutely. And he said that he initially thought it had to be someone local, and he started second guessing himself. He said, I don't know now. It is a serial killer type of thing. And I believe this personality, that if Richard Allen is the one responsible for it, that he is of the personality that, is he a repeat offender? I absolutely believe he's done something somewhere. Murder or not, I don't know. But he is a repeat offender of certain crimes. You just don't wake up at 40-something years old and start doing these things. Of course, some of the stuff that I've said, about being a random act but a person of no conscience, a sociopath. I put him as a psychopath. He put him as a sociopath. Okay. He was uncanny. He says someone's going to get caught in 2 or 6 years. I mean, we was almost at 6 years. And as part of a deal we've seen in the past with serial killers. And it's odd that he brought up part of a deal. Is this part of a deal? We don't know. I know there's a lot of people saying it's part of a deal as far as Kegan Kline. Don't know. But that would be uncanny if that does come to pass. And he said that the FBI is looking at crimes in other locations, which there's been a lot of places, whereas Richard Allen has lived in his life where other victims have been found of different types of murders that's unsolved. Does that mean that he's the one that committed them? No, but they're going to look at them. And he says that if it was repeated, that he expects that some of these signatures might pop up again. And he says there's a lot more physical evidence than what was at the crime scene. And we're finding that to be the case, that whatever was at the Richard Allen's home, if there's anything to link him to that crime scene, hopefully they'll find it and they'll be used in court. And, but it's just a fascinating case, and it's going to be moving forward rapidly. And I wanted to give everybody an opportunity that when we look at this case through the eyes of how many dots is Mr. Ives right now connecting, because he has a lot more information than we do. He had it from the get-go. And, you know, that team of prosecutors is not just going to be the current prosecutor. They're going to get the resources in there to make sure that they dot all their I's and cross all their T's, and try to create the best case that the state can. And they're still working on it. And I believe that's part of why the documents were sealed, and they wished them to remain sealed. They didn't want some of the information out there about how many tentacles or other actors that possibly may be involved. But if you have any information on this case, like I said, for the law enforcement, for prosecution, or for the defense, kind of tip it in, let them know, because like I said, we have to have justice for Libby and Abby. And but anyway, if we got any questions.
Okay. We're starting off with one that's very close to my heart, and it's why.
Why you after her heart?
How about those bulldogs? Oh, I forgot to get the dog her meds.
Uh-oh. Yeah, we got a dog up there that...
Sorry about the dog, y'all. I forgot to give her her meds.
Yeah, it barks. It wants to be down here with us. I don't know why. She only bites me about 50 times a day.
She hates closed doors. I don't know why. Only dog I've ever had that hates closed doors. So I apologize. I'll try to do better. All right. And Molly, I heard a news report that there was a special prosecutor for the Delphi case. Has one been appointed?
I don't know. And I know that over the years or two, there's been a special prosecutor brought up, I think, for something else. I don't know if that's what they're talking about, or is it just this case?
And Molly, the judge did give a gag order for everyone until a hearing in a few weeks. Not sure of the date. Any thoughts on if the gag order will continue throughout?
I expect that all the officers of the courts, the defense, prosecution, and families, and people that have the witnesses and everything will be under that gag order. Yes, I would expect that.
All right, and hold on one second. And Lisa, RA gets more creepy the more I see him. Did you hear he allegedly liked to randomly scare women? That doesn't shock me.
Well, if that is true, that will come back to haunt him.
Yeah. It should.
At a certain point.
It should. And Molly, you've said in the past, Ellie is human. Mistakes are always made, hopefully few. Do you think the errors in the Delphi case are worse than average, or are they magnified because of the high-profile case? Woo.
Unfortunately, no, it's not any higher than average. You go back and you look at the Green River Killer, you look at Ted Bundy, those serial killers that went out and their victims that they accumulated over the years, even after they were missed in the early days and interviewed and law enforcement passed by, it happens. Sadly, and everybody has to try to go back and learn. And every time it's said that we learn from our mistakes, and then you see that, well, no, we don't. But law enforcement tries their best, and we are human. And it's easy to Monday morning quarterback on these cases, and you say, how do you miss it? And I absolutely in the fog of war and fog of these high profile cases and all this information. The officers that work this case, they're the ones that's going to stand up there and look at each other and say, how did we miss this? And I've made mistakes before, and I'll make some more mistakes. Even as I go out and do the best I can for these people that I try to help on my cold cases, I do the best I can, but that doesn't mean I won't miss something. We're all human, and sometimes it clicks, sometimes it don't. It just hinges on a small fact here and there.
Just that one piece.
That one piece, exactly.
Okay. I got a lot of comments saying to bring Miss Maggie on the show. Y'all don't want Miss Maggie on the show? Should be running everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to bite him.
Oh, yeah. She bites me. I mean, she likes protecting her.
Yep. She's my baby. All right. And Debbie, could someone create a checklist for cops on what to do when there is a murder? Here we go. Here's the checklist.
Here's the checklist.
How many pages? It's a few.
I mean, you know, and actually it says checklist right here. But yes, there is a checklist, and that was back. This was back before we had your computer programs and everything. But there is a checklist, and that goes along with the murder books and stuff. But even with those checklists, whoever entered that one piece of information, whoever took the narrative, and how it was processed and it was overlooked, and you have to look at, they're always out there checking about who created these false alibi. And so as I did a week or two ago, when I put my top three in there, which was Kagan Klein, Ron Logan, and Richard Allen. Richard Allen didn't have an alibi. Richard Allen says, I was there. So he never had an alibi that had to be broken. He put himself at the scene. And so, but you had two other guys that created false alibis that for whatever reason. And so law enforcement focused on them. And so, you know, and that's huge.
Okay. 1 second. All right. And single mama 4. Do all killers use a calling card, as they say?
No. Certain types do, especially, you know, like hillside stranglers but there are certain types of signatures, BTK, bind, torture, kill. They'll have a signature that feeds their fantasy. And now with that change, as with the internet and as certain killers become aware of the capabilities of law enforcement, the ones that aren't fed by fantasy in certain areas will be able to evade. But the ones that have those fantasies, that have to meet those fantasies, they'll always be they'll be leaving information, calling cards that will lead to their door at some point.
And bodacious, can they look at all of the pings in the area? Do they need a specific phone number to track?
And part of the information gathered by law enforcement, if you look at the affidavit and you look at the information gathered by that conservation officer that the defense offered, you see that they were asking and gathering certain information on that phone, and they had that information, and they gathered that information so that they could check it off a list of information that they had at the home office of all of the phones. And so was that one thing, the thing that threw, that you have a guy that says, oh, that's my phone. And so they checked it off the list, and Richard Allen's phone got checked off the list as, you know, well, he came forward and said, that's me. Don't know, but very possible.
And the mob crew. I can't believe it didn't click in the beginning. He put himself there literally a half hour before the murders. So crazy.
That's what I'm saying. He didn't have to. He never
No, what?
created an alibi. He put himself there. He interjected himself into the investigation. He came forward, and and the three girls verified everything that he said. Later on in 2022, he verified what another witness said, that he was on that first platform. So his memory was extremely good of everything that occurred that day, other than he says he never saw Libby and Abby.
And Todd. But RA did not come forward after the 2019 press conference when DC asked the person who parked at the CPS building to contact LE, because by then the BG video was public and RA would have been identified.
You're absolutely correct. And that will, if he takes the stand, that will be brought up to him. And they'll get that in there some shape, form, or fashion through the investigators, that they'll devise or create a list of questions that will get that point across. Did anyone ever contact you? But the prosecution will get that point across to the jury.
And Ivy Rose, I would love to know what the date was that he met with the officer, and if he came forward or if they contacted him first.
I don't know what that noise is.
Is that you?
Yeah, something on my computer. If the computer goes out, hang with us, guys. Yeah, it will be interesting what that date was, and who contacted who. And I know that from the defense, it's that Richard Allen reached out to law enforcement. That's what they're saying, that he's the one that came forward.
Okay. And Perry, UK True Crime, your experience with the cell location might be why LE couldn't pin down Ron Logan's movements, which they mentioned in search affidavit.
I believe that's the case because they use wording in their search warrant, in the area, nearby, things like that.
I mean, and it was in the area or nearby.
Yeah. And
it was crazy.
And that was 5 years later. So I agree with the FBI in their affidavit of their description. Sometimes, like I said, they just try to oversell certain points.
And Perry, again, what could be the message if intentionally leaving a bullet? That he chose to use a knife? I
don't believe that was the signature, but I'm just saying that if there is a possibility it was, but no, I don't. I think he accidentally, through some situation, the gun misfiring, or during a struggle, or at some point that bullet got ejected from that gun through the cycling. I don't think it was an actual signature, although it could be, but I think it was there due and left accidentally, not on purpose.
Accidentally, not on purpose. Okay. And Ann, I imagine in opening arguments, defense counsel will acknowledge RA was at the bridge within the time frame of the crime, since RA has placed himself there. What they will contest is why he was there.
Oh yeah, I mean, he.
What did he say? He was.
Looking at the fish.
Looking at his fish.
Oh yeah. And that's an interesting term, fish. Yeah. Catfishing. I mean,
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Okay, at 8:49.
It's amazing how she keeps up with stuff I can't do.
I'm, as you can tell, it's a wee bit of a struggle sometimes. So I hope I'm not missing anybody. But you know how that goes. All right. Per Molly, we need some likes out there, please.
Yes. Anything y'all do, the viewings, the thumbs up, all that, guys, helps our channel so much, and we appreciate all the support that y'all give us.
All right. And the mob crew. If the car was parked facing west to east, then cars passing by would really only see the front end and wouldn't be able to tell how long the car was, in my opinion.
Yes, and that's a good point. That what does the hood on the Ford
Yeah.
uh,
Ford Focus.
yeah, Ford Focus versus the PT Cruiser versus Smart Car? What are the hood designs, and how much of it was visible? Um, I have no idea.
That would be interesting.
It is.
All right. And Jordan, the shoe casting can't be that huge. The guy has to have tiny feet.
That's right. Yeah. If you look at my feet, you'll know where I go. And I, but this individual, that footprint and that mud, if he was in there and they have Libby Abby's shoe prints, and then they have another third, and you may even have searchers, and they would have to discuss all that and determine if those shoe prints are actually related to the three individuals that we know were at the crime scene. Now, there could be more, but we know that we have to have our two victims and at least one offender.
And Ivy Rose, Ron Logan's search warrant lists devices used to search ways to cover up or destroy a crime scene. Is that standard, or do you think the killer tried to destroy evidence at the scene?
There is possibility, and there's rumors out there. Was there certain things that were attempted to be cleaned up? Was the creek used in a certain fashion to clean the scene? There's all different types of rumors out there. We don't know what measures were taken. We don't know if there was some type of cleaner used, but that was a strange statement. For whatever reason, they included that, and I have no idea. We'll find out because the list of it, it'll be listed on those evidence sheets of the items collected at the crime scene that day, along with the bullet or the unspent round, as they say.
All right. And Mary, could R.A. wife testify against him?
If she chooses to, I guess she could. But
you better know I would. You did something like that.
Oh yeah. Oh no.
Actually, you wouldn't be there to testify.
Yeah. She'd get rid of you. No, it's that's a choice that has to be made. And from what defense says, she's supporting him. So no, they won't be able to force it.
Mm. And Jordan, do we know if R.A. has any military service? He's pictured in some military headgear, and a SIG P226 is a duty weapon for the Navy and some roles in the Army.
I don't know if he has any military service or not, and don't know if he had any type of personal training. I have no idea. Good question, though.
And Jennifer Rochelle, what if someone was at the end of the bridge, so that is why the girls didn't run, because they thought they were safe because of this person, if they had seen the gun while he was still away from him?
Yeah, and there can be a lot of reasons that until you realize the conspiracy, that you could get swallowed up in that and be thinking that you're in a safe area or a safe place. And good theory, good possibility. If there's multiple offenders, that may very well be the case.
I do like that one.
If there's multiple offenders, that could very well be the case.
You got my wheels turning, Jennifer. All right. And Todd, do you believe it's at all possible that Ellie has been tracking R.A. for 5 years, just waiting for that final piece to fall into place?
I don't personally believe that. Could it be possible? Sure, but I don't believe that.
Deep Waters 333. Why would the killer expel a bullet after the bodies had been staged? They were already deceased.
Michelle brought up a good point the other day, and about that. Some people at some point, um, certain people carry guns in certain uh, ways, and some people don't like to carry a gun that has one in the chamber. Is that his chosen carry method? Don't know. Was it lost during a struggle? Don't know. Did he cycle the weapon to scare the girls and had forgotten that there was one in the chamber, or had he just failed to realize that there was one in the chamber and he cycled it and spit it out and he couldn't find it due to the chaos of the crime scene of what was going on? We don't know, but that is interesting.
Okay. And Jennifer, why did RL say he was at the fish store at 5:30, but then changed it to 2:30? Why are fish being brought up in scenarios that don't make sense?
I have no idea, and it is extremely interesting. There's fish mentioned all the time on this,
They
and
like their fish.
and you see the new theory that came out in the last day or two, and that they're bringing out that links everybody together. But what is the agenda of that theory, and who is it presented by, and how truthful is it? And it, we just don't know. And that right now, Ron Logan making up that and asking for, and I can see the point of the FBI of saying this guy asked for a alibi at the time of the crime, which is I can't explain it. It's I can't explain it. Highly suspicious, and I can see why FBI would focus on that. I still find it highly suspicious.
Yeah. Let's see.
But there's explanation. People explain that it's just due to his driving history. I don't know.
All right. And Robin Steve, since RA worked at the local business, wonder why no one recognized his voice to connect his voice or not.
I don't know. And I don't know really what Richard Allen sounds like. I know that there's been some testing out there, and from what I've heard, it's similar. But what was the reasoning of it? Did he not speak very often, or did he purposely change his voice when he did speak so that no one would connect it? Don't know.
And Anne, where do you think the quote murder weapon figures in all this, since we haven't heard anything at all about that publicly from anyone in LE or the DAs?
I'm hoping that they have far more evidence than the bullet. I'm hoping they have that murder weapon. I hope that he kept it, and if he is the one that's responsible, and it is part of his trophy collection, because certain individuals, the behavioral science unit believes that certain people, such as him, would maintain trophies or collect trophies, and were trophies taken, and the weapon used in a crime would be something that he would absolutely keep, because it would have so much value to him and his fantasies.
Okay.
That was his weapon of choice.
And the mob crew, I wonder if they had major tunnel vision for the first 2 years, maybe Klein's and Logan and others, and finally 2019 they hit the restart button.
It appears to be that case, and it appears they still have others in that focus right now, that they're when they make these statements about other tentacles and other actors. How far does it go, and who does it reach to? But absolutely, I agree with you.
All right, now here's another one. It says for me to look away, but you know how that goes. And Todd, look away, Mrs. Steve. This is for Mr. Steve. When my Buckeyes thump the dogs. Will you be investigating that? Ha, thanks for another great show. Appreciate your generous efforts. No, that would be my investigation.
Yeah. Yeah, it won't be a good.
It won't be a good night if I lose.
No.
I can tell you that. All right. And Anna Lizette, this is an incredibly stupid crime. If local guys did this a mile out of town, are they desperate, stupid, mentally ill? Only insane luck hit him or them for almost 6 years.
You are absolutely correct. I mean, he was missed. He fell through the cracks in every way that you could fall through the cracks. Due to his proximity of living close to the scene was eliminated.
Yep.
Him coming forward saying I was there, that was a box checking. Not having to have an alibi, that was something that knocked it, that checked a box. But he still fell through the cracks by even putting himself there. And if he is the right one, yes, he was extremely lucky, you know. And when he was asked 5 years later of what he was wearing that day, he described bridge guy, which at that point it didn't matter. But if they'd asked that 5 years ago, would he have said the same thing? Don't know.
All right. And Teresita, wouldn't cleaner damage the victim's skin?
And we don't know. We don't know anything about the victims. But yes, there's certain cleaners out there that would. We just don't know what was on that scene.
And Anna, it sounds like the actual killing was done with victims on the ground. Did the killer threaten with the gun while telling them to lie on the ground?
That's often the case, that whatever you use to gain control, but there's also at certain points, how was the crime scene there at the murder site? How organized was it? How disorganized was it? Because at some point the girls would have realized that there's no out. And then it's no longer flight, it's fight. And how much of a fight did they put up, and what results as far as injuries to them did that cause? There's just so much that can happen at those crime scenes.
And Robin, hi Steve. Wonder if L.E. or anyone recognized R.A. voice from his employment to connect him to Libby's phone recording. Guys down the hill, just curious.
It would be interesting that you brought that up, and the others have brought up about the voice and everything. Was he tipped in over the years by certain people? How many tips did it take? Was there a file? Because there's some mention or rumor about a file. Was there a file whereas 10, 15, 20 people say, hey, that sounds like Richard Allen? And if that's the case, and is that what eventually did it? I don't know. I'm hoping that regardless, we are exactly where we wanted to be. We have somebody that is a monster if he is the one responsible, and he's exactly where he needs to be.
All right. One more question on the voice from Angela. Why have there not been actual voice comparisons made to confirm if it's RA's voice on the video or not? Wouldn't that be irrefutable evidence?
And we don't know there's not. We're going to find out how what type of science is that, and how is the defense going to look at that? Or are they going to say that's junk science also, or even what the possibilities of that? I've never had a dealing where they did voice comparison. I know that you look at some of the things that occurred, and you watch TV that on those they mention voice comparisons all the time. But how good of a science is it? I don't know. I've never seen it in a court. But I'm sure we'll probably find out in the coming years if that's done.
And Todd, if RL was involved, including a personal history with CSAM, would it not have been discovered by LE when they searched his property in 2017?
I believe absolutely. And if it had been found, I think they would have charged him almost instantly. And that's some of the reasons I don't put a lot of confidence in some of the recent stories about him being involved. When you're the target of the FBI or any law enforcement agency of a double murder of two little children, when they reach out for you and come after you, they're going to take everything that they find and use it against you. And that wasn't the case. They would have charged him with they would have pencil whipped him as good as they could have, and they didn't. And there's a reason for that.
And Pigeon at True Crime Web, Mr. and Mrs. Steve, in your opinions, was it the bravery of Liberty which solved the case?
Absolutely played a part in it, along with Abby. They chose to stay together for whatever reasons, and they stayed together. And we, without them and those pictures made and what happened that day, yes, they absolutely, they have a legacy.
Yep. All right, let's see here. I'm cruising to see what we got.
And not only the legacy of what they did that day, but the legacy of what parents, and that we will all have the opportunity to share this story because it's so well documented, and that we can show our children and our neighbors and everybody that this is what's out there. And as far as even catfishing or being on trails just with one friend, what does it take as far as situational awareness to protect yourself and what to do? There's so much that can be used with this one crime that we'll always owe Libby and Abby, and give them credit for their due credit for what the loss of her life has brought.
Sorry. Deborah Young, R.A. remembers what he wore 5 years and 7 months ago. That got me, because I sure don't have any clue what I wore that long ago, or in my case, a week ago.
Yes.
I agree on that one.
I had tonight when I was putting my shirt on, I had to look and say and find my other shirt that I wore yesterday, make sure it was a different shirt.
Bless his heart. Let's see here.
She has to dress me sometimes.
All right, so no more questions.
All right, guys. Well,
Anything? Another update on Cyclops, and I've got 3 states sitting on my desk.
all righty. Well, like I said, I appreciate everybody coming here tonight. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up, share it. If you want to subscribe, we'd appreciate it.
Are you going to give them a hint about what you're doing with your stuff?
Which
Your plaster?
Oh yeah. We're going to be doing some more tests, and I've got to go up and re-photograph the crime scene I have up in the woods, and we'll be doing some other testing that will be for next week, and looking forward to getting that to y'all of things that may be brought out in trial, and but I'm looking forward to doing those, and I enjoy doing them, and look forward to getting that information to you. But I'm not going to tell them everything.
Oh,
she gets upset at me. She likes participating.
It's fun.
It is. But anyway, I'm gonna go, and I think I'm gonna run over and watch Kristen behind the crime door there for a few minutes, and say hi. And anybody wants to join me, come on over.
All right, love y'all.
Y'all have a good night. Stay safe.